welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. Not just another episode, but episode 149. My name is Aaron, and with me as always is Dave and Fredo. How are we doing, guys?
Good.
Doing pretty good.
So, welcome to St. Patrick's Day week. Yeah, so my events start in earnest tomorrow, as Fredo pointed out in a text message. I'm playing from Wednesday through Saturday, so I'll probably have to cut off my left hand because it will be dead from guitar playing. So, but oh well, it'll all be in good fun.
At what gig will you mix in the Gilligan's Island theme?
At what gate? What?
Yeah, what gig? At what point are you going to be tired of singing the same songs over and over? You're just going to let me throw in the theme from Gilligan's Island and see if anybody notices.
So it's funny. Well, I mean, I do that in a song anyway. I do it all the time. It is kind of funny to see if anybody's paying attention. Because Gilligan's Island actually is one of those. There's several songs that have the same kind of pattern and rhythm. So it's like to certain songs, like for example, you can sing Amazing Grace to the tune of Peaceful Easy Feeling by the Eagles. You know, it's just because of the way that the meter works. So I put in Gilligan's Island theme at the end of this, I add a verse onto this Irish song, and at a gig, somebody came up and said, "Is that where the song came from?" No.
No.
But actually, there was one time at the session, it was funny. We were playing a bunch of reels, and then somebody started playing the Flintstones theme, and everybody just kind of followed along and played the Flintstones theme because it's kind of fun. So anyway, no, like I said, a lot of Irish stuff going on. Now, Dave, you're married to an Irish lass.
Yes.
And are you Irish as well?
I got a little bit of that in there.
The name your last name seems a little Irish.
German.
It's German? Well, then never mind. That's not Irish at all.
Well, I'm half German, and then most Scots-Irish on the other side mostly.
So how are you so patient?
I don't know.
You're one of the most patient people I know. So I have to tell you guys also a funny little thing here. So my sister is on spring break. She is an athletic trainer in Texas. And she sent me a text and she said, "So I watched Top Gun Maverick last night. Have you guys seen Top Gun Maverick?"
Finally caught it, yeah.
I have not. So Fredo, might get a kick out of this. She said, and I might have to find the exact text to do it justice, but it was really funny. She said, let's see here. I watched Top Gun Maverick yesterday, and I've determined that the plot was a combination of stolen ideas from Iron Eagle and Star Wars. If you remember the 80s movie Iron Eagle, and she said,
yes.
She's like, you got all this, airplane stuff going on. Then it's like they have to shoot their rockets into a port that's like a trench run. There's like a port that's like 2 meters wide or something like that. She's like, this is like Star Wars. and Iron Eagle. So the movie that everybody thinks is so awesome, which I haven't seen, and it probably is awesome if it's made up of like Star Wars ideas. So
all I'll say is this: it's competently done, well acted. It's not the most serious movie, but it knows how to play with emotions. It really does a good job of just getting you root for Tom Cruise and getting you to like the characters that you're seeing, and kind of has a lot of emotional beats that kind of catch you on the path. It's not the greatest movie ever. It's not Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's no depth there.
Since Animal House.
Caddyshack, or since Caddyshack now. But it's fun. But in terms of enjoyment, it's probably a good 7 or 8 out of 10 in terms of just sitting back and just having a good time, which is more than I expected when they announced it, because I thought it was just going to be a cash grab, but really well done.
Did you guys see Iron Eagle in the 80s?
Yeah.
Louis Gossett Jr. and
yeah.
That was a guilty pleasure in our house. 2. Well, they shouldn't have done. There was an Iron Eagle 3. They should have stopped after Iron Eagle 1. Because I guess it was a fun movie. It was, like I said, a guilty pleasure in our house.
It's
So
got a song from Queen in its soundtrack, which
there you go.
immediately ups the 80s.
Yeah.
It's like Queen and the Kenny Loggins. If you got that in your soundtrack, your movie's going up a percentage point.
That's right. That's right.
But speaking of Oscars buzz recently, I will toot mine and Fredo's own horn when we both on our favorite things of last year listed Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Um, it's worth watching. It may not be your favorite movie ever, but it's definitely worth watching.
I will say the hardest thing about it is describing it to people because I might know during the Academy Awards broadcast, my parents were asking me, "So what is it about?" And I kind of went like, "There's, I went
It's about
Inigo
everything,
Montoya. It's like,
everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, I went. There is too much. Let me sum up basically because there's just too many genres mixed in, too much, and the kitchen sink put in. But it's just so well done. And congrats to the Daniels. Congrats to
Oh
Michelle
yeah.
Yeoh, Ki Hui Kwan, who, you know, I'm sorry if you're not happy for that guy, you have no heart. Jamie Lee Curtis, who, I mean, the Nepo baby talk is like, wait a minute, but she's earned her stripes. So the whole movie was just awesome. So go see it.
So
Actually, stream it.
last bit of a tangential just banter. Every morning I have Google News feed that I go through, and there was an article from, it's a comic book. So I don't know. It was just some like comic book fan site, but they ranked the 10 most powerful superheroes, and I'm not going to read you the list because there was like a bunch of them that I had no idea who they were. At the top of the list, lo and behold, was Superman, number one. But what I found interesting, and this might be something to like, we might have to get Scott Colesby on to argue about these things, because they had Wonder Woman as more powerful than Captain Marvel. Now I know that Wonder Woman is descended from gods, but Captain Marvel also kinda. I mean,
Yeah, it's one
supernatural
of those.
powers.
Yeah,
I don't know it. So this seems like something that we could have a really big nerd fight over. Because I one time asked Colesby about Endgame. I was like, why wasn't where's Captain Marvel? He's like, if she would have been there at the beginning of the fight, then it would not have been a fair fight. It would have been done. Just it wouldn't have been any suspense at all. So I was like, okay, I got that. But then I'm like, I don't know. Do you think Wonder Woman more powerful than Captain Marvel? Is that I can't give you the reasoning right now because it was 5:15 in the morning, but
there's a debate to be had there, but it's interesting. Captain Marvel's powered by cosmic energy and whatnot.
also, I'm sorry,
Wonder Woman's Wonder Woman.
Thor was more powerful than Captain Marvel in this ranking as well.
That's interesting.
That's not the way MCU plays this up. So
what's fun about these sorts of debates, and again, like I don't think like a definitive ranking makes any kind of flipping sense because like
right.
the idea is that in any given situation or scenario, so and so could get the upper hand on this other person. And that's where the drama comes out and where it becomes interesting. It's like, would Wanda Maximoff be more powerful than Captain Marvel in a particular situation? Maybe, but again, like the circumstances would dictate all of that.
And that's what I love about those articles or like podcasts where it's like it's the meme that says Thor, Wonder Woman is more powerful than Captain Marvel. Prove me wrong. It's just take a stance and tick people off, and that's how you get people listening and engaging. It's what good teachers do. It's like you don't always, when you're trying to get people to interpret literature or interpret music or something like that, sometimes I've said it on here. That's what I do sometimes is I say the ludicrous thing to get you guys fired up. So
well, it's much in the same way. I mean, and sports fans have that same debate whether we're talking LeBron versus Michael Jordan or Tom Brady versus Joe Montana. So there's which one's better than the other, and at some point, yeah, people are gonna land on one side, people are gonna land on the other, and It's a million and one reasons why you pick one over the other. So
Anyway,
it's subjective. It's up to you.
so y'all listening on this, let us know. Do you think that Thor is more powerful than Captain Marvel, or and should Superman be at the top? But anyway, all right, let's do a little bit of Star Wars trivia tonight. We're going to be talking about some Bad Batch, and it's not again. We're not going to go synopsis of. We're going to talk about the episodes that we haven't really been talking about, and just kind of where this this series is going. It's some really intriguing things have been happening in the last couple episodes. So yeah, so we'll be hitting on that here after some news. But first, some trivia, and I am not going to give this question. I read it while Fredo was talking, so it doesn't count. So I'm skipping over that one. That question, by the way, was what color is the glove that Luke wears over his damaged hand? Come on. But anyway, all right.
Yeah.
So Dave, you get the first one. What planet is Anakin on when his lightsaber ends up hacked in half? It's in your favorite prequel movie.
Well, I'm not even sure that helps. Geonosis?
It is Geonosis, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
When he gets up from the machine and holding it half a lightsaber in his hand.
Obi-Wan's gonna kill me. Best, however, I will say Attack of the Clones has one of the best lines in any Star Wars movie when it said, "Why do I think you're going to be the death of me?" You know, it was like that was a nice little, har line.
My favorite little delivery there is when he says, "Oh, we thought we'd come rescue you," and Obi-Wan just looks up at his chains and goes, "Good job."
Yeah,
it's just perfect deadpan. Just you might as well not have tried.
I feel like Anakin got his lightsaber cut in half in the Dooku fight too, because he had two sabers at one point. One of them got sliced, like disabled.
Did he get sliced in half or just get kind of knocked out of his hand? I don't know. That's a good question.
But it wasn't his at that point, I guess, because he'd already lost.
Revenge of the Sith, right? Yeah.
No, and the end of Attack of the Clones.
Oh, he's still in Geonosis.
He's coming at him with two sabers, but neither of them were his. And I guess that's the distinction.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. All right, Fredo. What industrial guild is led by the mechanically enhanced technocrat Wat Tambor?
Is that the Techno Union?
That is the Techno Union.
Which always went like this. Exactly.
Pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants.
Yeah. Their DJs are amazing.
Yeah. All right. So the one I look at, who interrupts Han and Leia's first kiss? Well, I mean, I don't think interrupts is the word that the phrase we would probably use. We'd probably use something else. But anyway, we'll say interrupts. But that would be C-3PO. Yes.
All right. C-3PO with the C-3PO block.
That's right. By the way, okay, so I sent you guys... I've talked about Screen Crush several times on this podcast on YouTube. So the people listening, go check out their page, because they had a very interesting. They're pitching some ideas of where we're going with the Disney Plus series, and possibly, like I said, these are all speculations, but they're thinking of like a Star Wars Avengers. Like you're going to have, and we've talked about a little bit, the meeting up of maybe Skeleton Crew and Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Boba Fett and Fennec Shand and, all those characters to take on one big baddie. Real quick, we'll just take 2 minutes. What do you guys think of that idea? If it was to culminate in a Disney Plus series, or maybe just a standalone movie a la the Avengers?
Most of these shows that sort of cross over would allow for that, because you have the Book of Boba Fett, you have Mandalorian, and you have Ahsoka coming out,
and like I said, Skeleton Crew as well.
So there's I mean, again, like when you build a building block on top of another building block, and you ultimately get to a point where you can do that, and that's very much what the comic book universes have done. Like a television example of that would be the Marvel's Defenders stuff, right?
Hmm.
They did that where they had here's a series on top of another series, and then eventually we're going to bring everybody together.
But do you think it would be a good idea? Is that something that would interest you as far as, because you were saying last week, just give me a Star Wars movie. What if that Star Wars movie was all these things, that this type of concept?
I don't. I don't know if I'd want it to be that, just because of the access factor. I love that people can just like come to a movie and watch it and enjoy it and not have to like think about what it is and where it came from and who are all these characters. I know a couple of these characters, but who's that person over there? Anything like that, that's still kind of a barrier for Star Wars.
Well, we will be talking about that during Bad Batch conversation. That might be a good segue. You have very good, you have a very good point. Fredo, what do you think?
Yeah,
Was that something you would be turned on by?
I'm not against it. No, I'm not against it, but I think, and Dave brings up the point, the example I want to bring up, which is Marvel's Defenders, which, for those of you who don't know, Netflix had access to some of Marvel's properties, Daredevil, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and they did a good job, Iron Fist aside, for a specific reason, in setting up Defenders as the eventual team up of these heroes against the forces they were going to fight. Defenders, the series itself, didn't come off as well, though. And I think that kind of gets to what I was going to say, which is it's all about execution. Because it can come off really, really well, or it could come off as forced, like you're trying to shoehorn the crew of, the Skeleton Crew next to Boba Fett and Ahsoka. And while there is a level of fun and entertainment in seeing all your heroes together in one place, again, the Avengers mashup, so to speak, it's for it's a lot of one of the things that Marvel does well is it makes that feel organic, so that even though, like, hey, Daredevil turns up in She-Hulk, or you know Captain America is in somebody else's story, that kind of thing, where they all turn up in one another's universes and or storylines, and it doesn't feel out of place. I think where because we've seen Boba Fett in Mando's storyline, it felt natural to bring Mando back. Likewise with Ahsoka with Mando. It's going to be interesting to see if we bring Boba Fett and Ahsoka together, because I don't think they've had interactions yet on a serious basis outside of what we saw in Clone Wars, but we haven't seen them in live action. So I think it's all about execution. That's really my point. It's if you're going to do it, you got to nail it. Otherwise, it's going to feel.
I think it sounds cool. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I think it would be a cool thing for them to do. Um, and I will also say that the first time I saw the Avengers, yeah, I was a little off kilter because this was way back when. This was when I lived in Nebraska, watching a little bit of Avengers. Still kind of knew who people were. Some people I didn't, but I still, enjoyed what I watched of it. So I don't know, might be cool. Um,
One brief thing to say too is I just think if you don't do it, I think you risk alienating some people by not doing it, because people were like, well, you have all these characters and you have all these actors signed up and you're not going to bring them together. Like, what's the point? Um, so I think like on that level, they're not obligated to do it, but it would be a missed opportunity. I mean, like, you're not going to have that opportunity 15 years from now, potentially. So that's what I'll
And
say in
Disney
favor.
and Disney's gonna want you to do it just from a marketing synergy strategy standpoint. Just the idea of them owning all these characters and having them all right now, when you can bring them together, it's not gonna cost them much more to put Rosario Dawson in the same room as Pedro Pascal and Tamora Morrison and then Jude Law. They could do that. So right now you probably could do it. You can't do it 10 years from now.
so anyway, let us know on Twitter. Reach out to us. Let us know what you think if you would like to see that type of thing. Might be kind of fun. But all right, well, that's enough of me wasting everybody's time on that stuff that I've been thinking about. Let's go to some news. We got about 3 things to touch on here. So, Fredo.
Yeah. First bit of news, and this is something that came out earlier in the week. Actually, no, late last week. They have announced officially from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi. So if you guys recall, we had the from a certain point of view, A New Hope, from a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back, where we talked to Brittany. This is now the continuation of that. So um, they're going to have a whole, it's going to be in honor of the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi's release. Although this is coming out on September 5th and it's available for pre-order, they say they're going to have 40 storytellers exploring the story of Return of the Jedi through the eyes of supporting characters, including heroes, villains, droids, aliens, and creatures. So that includes such stories as one that gives you a chilling glimpse into the mind of Palpatine, one talking about the Rancor Keeper.
So they've announced all of them? Have they?
Yeah, well, they've announced all the authors. They've only announced some of the storylines.
Okay, so Rancor Keeper. Okay, go ahead.
They got one exploring the life and times of the Sarlacc. They got one on Mon Mothma's secret mission to save the Rebel Alliance, which makes me wonder if that one's going to be considered canon, given we're still waiting for Andor season 2. Another one chronicling Wicket the Ewok's quest for one quiet day on the forest moon of Andor. So just want to go home and relax, and anyway. And then they're going to have a final one on Anakin Skywalker becoming one with the Force. Now, some of the authors, so they have authors including Olivia Blake, Charlie Jane Sanders, Mary Kenny, Mike Chen, the whole slew of different authors of different kind of stories. So again, if you've read the previous 2 iterations, you kind of know what the idea is. It's you're gonna get a little snippet of what the movie showed you and extrapolate a story out of that. And
quick,
again, it's available.
Quick gut reaction. You can't think too long. What story would you want to hear, Dave?
Return of the Jedi?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start. Bomar Monk.
Okay.
The spider dude with the brain in it. The Bomar Monk. I want a Bomar Monk story.
I think they alluded to this, but it's like the Bothans. I want to hear about the Bothans.
There you go.
Many Bothans. For me, actually, I'll go with one. I'll go with Rex. I want them to give me a story with Old Man Rex as part of the Rebel insurrection team.
There you go.
That'd be fun.
Because he's in there. They've told us, but
and ladies and gentlemen, those are fun books. Those are really cool books. Mm-hmm. I dig the concept behind it, and I wonder if they'll do it for the prequels and if they would be as powerful. But I guess we'll find out.
Well, that's just interesting because right now, I mean, they're doing them for the 40th anniversary of the original trilogy, and we're about to come up. Well, I'm trying to think. 1999.
Coming up on 25.
I don't know. I will say this: there's a bit of a difference. Dave Filoni has been doing a lot of work on explaining a lot of stuff that happened between Phantom Menace and A New Hope. So I think that ground has been covered adequately. So I don't think we need to hear about the Death Stick salesman. So
you sure you don't want to get a Captain Tanaka storyline or Captain Tanaka?
So anyway,
there's a lot of fun ground they could cover from some of those side characters.
The Watto Chronicles. How he's about to really stick it to this goofy Jedi guy. Moving on right quick. So because of all the interviewing that Jon Favreau's been doing, he was speaking to Movie TV, MOOVI. He liked the Kevin Smith burger chain, okay, Dave? So they're asking him about, continuity around, Star Wars media and kind of the period they're working. So he gives an interesting tidbit. He goes, there's definitely a conversation that's going on. And then also what happens after the sequel trilogy? Because the sequel trilogy only takes place over the course of a few years. And it's a big thing on the screen. It's eventful, but it's a relatively brief moment in history. So what happens after it is interesting too. And I know that there's some exploration going on about what happens after it, after the sequels. So I think that there are certain markers that we have, almost like studying ancient history, where you have to kind of know a few things that happen, but there's a lot of murkiness in between. So it's interesting that he's talking about how apparently they're already having discussions about the post Rise of Skywalker Star Wars universe. Kind of what we have. I mean, right now, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Boba Fett, Skeleton Crew's taking the place in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. But they're already having discussions about after Rise of Skywalker, which, if you let me, I will lean into something because the other bit of news that I have was um, remember we talked last week about there's the couple of movies that have been kind of shelved, the Patty Jenkins, the Kevin Feige. Then we were talking about potentially Taika Waititi's movie coming out. Well, there was another movie that was in the works, which is being written by Damon Lindelof. And apparently, well, this conjecture from Star Wars Newsnet. So apparently there's a report, according to Jeff Snyder, saying that it looks like his script, Damon Lindelof's script, is finished, and that they're looking at that as being the movie that'll come out Christmas 2025. Apparently, they already have they do have a director lined up. They already have actors being cast, and it's apparently going to be announced during Celebration next month, which is taking place in London. And apparently, the rumor there is that it would be set after Rise of Skywalker. So here we got Jon Favreau on one hand saying, "Yeah, we're having discussions within Lucasfilm about what the galaxy in Star Wars would look like beyond uh, Episode 9." And here's another rumor about potentially we're going to get the next movie is going to do that, just that. So
Cool. As long as there's a crawl. Um,
Well, okay. Well, we didn't get the crawl for the other two sort of spin-off movies. It's kind of reasonable to assume that they won't do it because they've established that as being their stylistic choice now, that you don't get the crawl unless it's episode 10.
but that's my question. Would we consider whatever the next movie is to be a spin-off, or will we consider it to be a continuation of the saga? And that's where it gets interesting to me because they clearly made a point about how Rogue One and Solo were not part of the. I mean, there were movies within Star Wars, but they were not part of the
see,
episodic saga.
I think uh, there's a easy way to explain it. They could say, yeah, one through nine was the Skywalker saga, but we still have Star Wars, and now we're talking about other stuff. It doesn't have to be about the Skywalker lineage. It does not have to be. And I would, if that's all they said, I'd be like, cool, that's fine. That we're just, it's more of a, the macro is about Republic politics. The micro was about the Skywalker lineage. You know what I mean? And so you can still have the macro and just now we're focusing on, because that's always one thing that bothered me is like, and the original trilogy, we're talking about a pinpoint. We're talking about 5 people in a huge galaxy. It's like, so there's more stuff that's going on. And like I said, I guess I would have no problem saying, okay, cool. So I don't
But
think
it's
they
also,
need to.
but it's also good. But you make a good point about the crawl because I mean we're accustomed to we see the big Star Wars logo to open up as the fanfare kicks in, and then to get the crawl, which is really almost like the allows you to kind of set your brain into okay, I'm about to watch a Star Wars movie. This is you're entering this universe. It's almost like when you see the opening credits to a show, or you begin look, it's the start. It's okay, you're watching Star Wars. So the idea that they would do away with that feels weird, at least on the movie level. I mean, I know they've done it, but
And I
at
didn't mean
least for
to.
the next movie where you know,
I didn't mean
mhm,
to get us down a rabbit hole on that. I was just alluding back to what Dave was saying
no,
last week.
no,
It is one of those things where there's
but it
like
connects. It connects the.
we don't. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
No,
we don't need to see Ray, Finn, and Poe. I would like to. Don't need to. You know,
mhm.
we can talk about them. You know, but we can just tell a new dang story. You know.
Would it be weird if they went all in and said, "This is episode 10. Here we go." Because like
No.
there's not a
They
20-year
should
gap.
they should skip to episode 15 and throw everybody way off. I mean, just, you know, or they don't have to they don't even have to have a number. It could just be a new Star Wars movie with a crawl. We've talked about that. So it doesn't even have to be episode 10. It could just
Kind of
be
like,
a movie
kind
that
of like they
takes
did the
place
original.
after episode 9. So, anyway,
I do miss the crawl. I want the crawl back, but I don't think we're going to get it with this project. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
all
So that's
right.
it for the news.
Cool. Cool. Well, all right. Well, let's talk some Bad Batch. And I think correct us if we're wrong here, Dave, but I think the last episode we talked about in earnest was the one with Gunji. Was that Tribe?
It might have been. Yeah.
So since then looking at Wikipedia, we've had the Clone Conspiracy, Truth and Consequences, The Crossing, Retrieval, Metamorphosis, and The Outpost. So the Clone Conspiracy, let's just again, we just maybe just do a couple like 30-second you know, kind of what we remember of these episodes. But the Clone Conspiracy, that is when you know, at the end Palpatine makes his triumphant return into the Senate, and they get the bill passed to do away with the clone troopers and bring in, I guess, enlisted people for it to be stormtroopers. So we were back to politics in our Star Wars. What'd you think of it, Dave?
That was fine. I mean, it seemed a little. The whole thing at the end where it's like, oh, we did exactly what he wanted us to do, you know, like, really? Not. I don't think you really did. The whole thing about Palpatine is that like he can twist any situation to his
He's a
advantage.
puppet master.
And so
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, we did the wrong thing by opposing him here and fighting him so hard. It's like, well, no. No, like I don't think you understood very well what was actually at play there, which is like he just twisted it. It's like as an opportunist, he saw that things unfolded a certain way and he just took advantage of it. And so um and I don't know, like his spin struck me as kind of you know, far-fetched and dorky, but again, like we deal with that every day in the current political arena where people are just constantly spouting nonsense at us. And
Well, you know,
yeah, I don't know.
I it, I wouldn't. Obviously, the biggest thing that Dave Filoni has to explain with the Bad Batch is what happened to the clones. That's the biggest thing that has to be explained away, and there's really no good way to do it. But I thought this was rather quick. It actually, to me, made total sense. Being a political junkie, that's what politicians do. You know, it's like you know, you've heard the expression, you know, never let a good crisis go to waste. You know, or what
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I mean, it's if you think back to 9/11, I mean, a lot of things. It's like, hey, we can get a lot of things pushed through that people who wanted a more, you know. I mean, there's a lot of that because you were preying on people's emotions at the time. Now, what did you think though about we had a clone who was trying to assassinate other clones and the senator, and then he ends up like chewing on a cyanide tablet and like right out of Captain America, and and so we don't know who this is or what's going on.
Hail Hydra!
Right. I mean, what did you think about that? It's like they seem to put a piece of intrigue in there that like just stuck out like a sore thumb. Like it wasn't needed.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the one hand, we as the audience know who's pulling the strings behind everything. What I find interesting is, about that whole arc was the Empire doesn't really need to find a reason for getting rid of the clones. They're manufacturing a reason, they're coming up with a reason, but in a weird way, it's not like they have to justify that. That's one of the fun bits about being an empire, and what the emperor says goes. Um, but it's surprising that they're going about it, but it's also surprising that they are making. I guess it's also almost more having to do with how Filoni and his crew of writers are seeing it. Is you have an audience that's invested years on these characters like Rex, like Cody, like Echo, like the Bad Batch, and now we're going to start to see their demise, because as far as the Empire is concerned, they're old tech, they're old technology. They don't, they have served their purpose. Got to get rid of them now, and you can't just simply shut them down like you can the droids. But they're going around it in a way to justify doing what they're doing, even though they don't need to.
And by the way, I have to say we've been actually talking about the clone conspiracy and Truth and Consequences at the same time. They kind of blend into one another.
Yeah,
It is so. So anyway, I mean, this was the big. All right, we're figuring out how the clones are getting pushed out. Um, so the next episode up is The Crossing. So it
yeah.
says the Bad Batch travel in the Marauder to a desert planet to go to an Ipsum mine where that Sid has purchased. So this is when they get trapped in the mine, and the Marauder gets stolen. Um, and if we can then also talk about the one that comes after that, which is Retrieval, when they get their ship back. So basically, we get what do you want to say? It's a bunch of kids working in a mine for a mean dude, and they end up overthrowing him.
Star Wars,
What'd you say?
Star Wars Oliver Twist,
Yeah, yeah.
Star Wars Oliver Twist.
The thing, the
Or
thing that
Temple of Doom.
the thing I thought that was interesting here was that they were telling the story of the rebellion. I'm going to go into at a micro level, where you have the evil. We did talk about this episode in one of our previous podcasts, but you have the guy who's eating up all the food and then giving them just little scraps, and so he obviously was a symbol for the Empire, and then the kids who were working in the mine were people who rebelled against it. So but it seemed to me that what they're setting up here is that people are starting to not dig the Empire and starting to fight back. So you can put this with Andor, you can put this with Star Wars Rebels. So it's just another kind of chess piece, I suppose. I don't know. What'd you think about these two episodes? And do you think, by the way, we're ever going to see that little thief kid again? Because he says, hey, if you ever need a thief, give me a shout.
Yeah, maybe. These episodes stood out to me for the interplay between Tech and Omega, in particular, and him having to sort of come to terms with the fact that they've got a kid in their midst, and he can't just be a walking thesaurus all the time. He actually has to try to engage with her on a human level.
Yeah, have empathy.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and like
But he did
it's
say
like, well,
something
no,
really
this.
interesting. I'm sorry, he did say something really interesting that
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
is worth pointing out. It's like just because I don't like basically I'm paraphrasing, but basically because I don't show my emotions doesn't mean I don't care. You know, it's kind of like I
Right.
mean, it's just because I'm not walking around with a big smile on my face and laughing doesn't mean that I'm not happy. You know, just because I didn't cry when, you know, this thing happened doesn't mean that it didn't move me. And Omega is very much the opposite of Tech, you know, as far as she has, I mean, empathy is a huge part of her, you know, of her makeup. So, but I did find that really interesting that, you know, hey, just because I don't, you know, walk around with my emotions on my sleeve doesn't mean that I don't care. So again, it's Tech also
I think
coming into, you know, saying, hey, I'm tired of being ignored here. I'm, you know, this is how I operate. Sorry.
no, and I think before Dave gets back in, I think that's what makes these episodes so interesting. It's because these episodes at the end of the Clone Conspiracy arc, Echo leaves with Rex because he feels the pull of duty that he has to his fellow uh, clones, demanding that he leave the Bad Batch. And for Omega, who's seeing Crosshair turn against them, is now seeing Echo leaving. There's a sense of her family being split up, and that's why she's looking for that emotional reaction. I mean, Hunter and Wrecker understand and accept where Echo's coming from, and Tech also does, but he's not being supportive, throwing an arm around her. And I think they almost need these the particular first episode when they're trapped allows them to bond in a way that's different from the way she's bonded to Hunter or Wrecker, where Hunter's almost like a surrogate dad and Wrecker's more like a big brother. You know, this was a way to connect with Tech in a different level, but that still values that bond. So that was interesting because of what we get in the 2 episodes later. But anyway,
We also got healing on the level of her getting the ship back. And like that was, she explained very clearly, like, I'm connected to this ship. This is an extension of our family. This is our home. Um, this is where we live. This is our place. And so um, for her, it's a deeply personal connection, and that's why it was so important to her to get that ship back. The rest of them were kind of like, well, it's a ship. We'll get another ship. It'll be fine. And she's like, no, I just lost Echo. I don't want to lose my home. Um, and so like that's relatable, and I liked just seeing like these little moments of healing that are occurring here. I wouldn't say they've like sort of moved past Echo leaving the team, but like I think these were necessary steps for them to take. And again, I suspect that we're going to see Echo again.
How tempting do you think, or how tempted do you think they were to make the little thief kid a young Han Solo? How
wouldn't
tempted
have
do you think?
surprised me, although
I mean, you think
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
somebody had to have put pitched that, and it's like, no, we can't do that. All right,
But
so
then just right quick, because we do have, I mean, in Rebels, we saw that happen all the time, where characters who would be part of one arc in season 1 or season 2 were there at the end in season 4 coming back together. So
yeah,
it's already been shown that they know how to do that and like doing it.
you got to get the people in place so you can use them all in the finale. Yep. So now we start kicking things up. And kids, if there was ever a moment when you needed to do the homework, Metamorphosis is that episode because oh my good lord, are the Clone Wars fans, the people, I mean the people who are Clone Wars fans, not like me who has watched the Clone Wars and like it, but I mean the people who that was their Star Wars growing up. Oh my good lord, are they excited because the Zillo Beast was in this episode.
Back.
And I had to go dumpster diving into Disney Plus to find out, it was like season 2, I think. And the Zillo Beast is this creature that feeds off energy and like basically eats power lines and grows. I don't know. Am I getting that wrong? That's basically what he does, right? And so, I mean, so in this episode, there's basically we find out that I'm going to say the cloners, the people who are wearing the patch, like the dude from Dr. Pershing from The Mandalorian. And we saw them wear it with the patches, the Camino patches at the end of last season of Bad Batch. They're transporting, like they were trying to transport the Zillo Beast. So it's like, what are cloners wanting with the Zillo Beast? So I mean, the whole episode was just we're chasing after this thing and trying to catch it. But there's the bigger question of what the Empire want with him. And I believe it's also this episode when we get the Camino Prime Minister, as he said they need to get Omega because she's got something special going on, the Force. But anyway,
Well, she's somebody that Nala Say, or is it Nala Say? It's
No, say.
the chief scientist from Camino values her highly, and we saw that at the start of the Bad Batch. So she means something to Nala Say, and the Prime Minister of Camino, Lamas, who says that's your end to get her to come work for you.
I think that might be the only thing that he really knows, or at least the only thing he's willing to disclose about her is that those two have a close relationship.
I think it's the latter, Dave, because you said that's the only thing he's willing to disclose. Because you remember there's in an earlier episode they were talking about their special project and they were talking about Omega, and so he knows why she is special. And let's remember, she is a quote unquote defected clone. But so again, the Empire's rounding up all of these things. I don't know. What do we?
Yeah.
It's kind of obvious that like you get Baby Yoda, in Mandalorian. It's like it's a logical step to say, okay, well, the Emperor's trying to, or somebody's trying to figure out how they can, clone the Emperor and give him force powers. But now we're using.
There is some of that.
Yeah, go ahead, Fredo.
Yeah, there is some of that. And part of me looks at it from the standpoint of what I found most interesting about this episode was, weirdly enough, the reaction of the Imperial forces. Because in the episode, they're trying to, the ship crash lands on this planet. The Bad Batch tries to find out what happened, find the Zillo Beast, try to flee from the Zillo Beast. Zillo Beast escapes, gets into the nearby town where people see it. Some of the locals see it. And what does the Empire do? Clamp down. They get the Zillo Beast back. They immediately start rounding up anybody who may have seen anything. So it tells you that this is important to the Empire. This isn't just we're just rounding up all these goofy creatures and whatever. No, whatever they're doing has some sort of value or sufficient value that they're willing to just wipe a city out of the map of a planet. Just something like that.
Yeah, it ties in with some of the stuff we saw in the Andor series, where it's just like the heavy foot of the Empire, and then just giving no sort of quarter to anyone when they deem it necessary or appropriate, which appears to be often. But in this case, in particular, it makes sense. These are. They don't want anybody knowing they're doing these cloning experiments and everything. Again, like none of this stuff came to light until Rise of Skywalker. Really, I mean, like maybe some of the Baby Yoda stuff will eventually learn more. Um, but it's like Emperor trying to clone himself, that didn't come out for 30
Yeah,
years.
and that's
So
go
it
ahead.
was secretive, is what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, of course it was secretive. Of course they were like stomping people out who might have a hint that this is the kind of experimentation that they were doing.
And we are. I mean, we're speculating and assuming, but I mean, let's say that we're right, and they're trying to clone these, you know, various powerful creatures. Aren't they writing themselves into a big plot hole that doesn't fit in the original trilogy? Because otherwise, it's kind of like they're trying to fix why don't we see any clones in the original trilogy. We have to explain that it was a political movement, and that's why they're not, stormtroopers, not clones. But in the meantime, now they're creating this arc of the Empire's using cloning to, um, try to find the powers of, get the powers of different beasts or, beings or whatever. It's like, to what extent? Is it just for the Exegol payoff in, episode 9? I think that would be, uh, man, that's a lot of work
I
just to
hope not.
explain away
Yeah,
that. It's like, so how,
I hope not.
and I hope we don't get another special edition where all of a sudden we get like the Red Hulk running around, Coruscant or something. Um, so,
No, yeah. I'm just going to say, I hope that's not the case. I hope that they're not trying to retroactively explain away because, hey, we got away with it with Clone Wars. We were able to fill in all these holes, quote unquote, all these gaps, and make the story more cohesive and better. Let's try that again with the whole plot point of episode 9, which is somehow Palpatine returned. I hope that Lucasfilm is not trying to retroactively make that something
well,
that they're trying
I
to
I
think
think
fix.
they are.
I,
I
however,
think they are.
That's
however,
a
I,
dumb idea.
I'm hoping that they put a bow on it at the end of like the Bad Batch series by, saying that, show them, maybe they create something that is just god awful, and then they destroy it, and there's like, okay, we can't do this anymore. And then Palpatine just, calls over one person, says, hey, but let's keep this tech, it's I don't know. It seems like they're writing themselves into a, like I said, a big plot hole of why don't we see a big Zillo beast running around, anyway. But it was interesting. I'm glad that the cloners are back, because that's the thing at the end of last season where it was like, what are they doing? And then it's taken them how many episodes to get there?
And we know that the cloners still play an important role because they're around for 6 years after the Empire's done, because they're still running around with Grogu. So we know that they're not done.
All right. Well, the most recent episode, which I think this is going to be interesting to talk about, was The Outpost. And we finally get Crosshair back, because Crosshair is sent on a mission with a new, obviously a new officer. He's and one that does not like
Hmm?
clones, which is really interesting. We're now, I mean, it's now like like not just a I don't like clones, but I mean it's almost a, you know a classist slash, racist, whatever you want. It's, I mean, it's that kind of ugliness hate for the clones. Um, so anyway, he goes to this outpost, and Crosshair just has he, I think his eyes become open again. Um, I don't know. I'm just going to leave it at that and let the conversation start. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in this episode, but I thought it was a good one.
There's a lot to say about his character and his growth, and how these episodes are to be cherished. My two favorite episodes of the season by far are Crosshair centric episodes. I think it was episode 3, where we saw him and we saw his interactions with Commander Cody, and that desperation to feel like he belonged to something. Um, and connected with people, and it's sort of just being snatched away from him. Um, and under the understanding of that for him comes full circle here, where okay, fine, I'll deal with it because I'm still trying to fit in. I'm still trying to find a purpose for myself. Um, this is what I do. I do it well. I'm okay with, being second class or whatever because this is familiar. Um, it took an extreme set of circumstances in this episode for him to kind of, as you said, see the light. It I have to carry a dying clone across this frozen wasteland, nearly die myself, and extol all of this effort, and get to the end of the line and have this sniveling, bureaucratic, pathetic person kill this man in front of me, essentially, and tell me, like, dare me, like, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
I just think it was incredibly powerful. I mean, like, that makes sense to me from a storytelling. What we know about his character and what he's been through, and how he has cast his lot in a certain way against the people that he used to serve with, in favor of this organization again, because it's familiar, and it provides a sense of purpose or belonging to him. He did all of these things. He did not do them lightly. For us to come around to this point, it would have to be something for severe for him to just completely decide, like, this is not for me anymore.
So
It's not.
I agree with you 100%, everything you said. And I think those are my two favorite episodes as well. My question, Fredo, to you is going to be, are those two episodes spread out too far in the overall series? Would they have been more effective had they been maybe only one episode between them, rather than about four,
Sure.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah, the three, the two on the planet with the mine, and then the one with metamorphosis. Yeah, I wonder if that might be the case, but also because we only have 4 episodes left this season, so I wonder if this is maybe the beginning of the push towards the season finale for the story. Um, because you're right, because there is clearly a connection between the two clone conspiracy episodes and this one, which is speaking about how the clones are being not just faced down, pushed down. We see it at the start of this episode where, these Imperial officers are talking to the clones and they're like, what the heck are we going to do to go to the clones? They're like, oh, you're a citizen of the Empire. You can do whatever you want. And they're like, we were born and bred for battle. We were literally created to serve the Republic back then, but now the Empire. And this is what they know how to do. It's not like they can take what they do and go become, something else. There's something powerful there, a correlation regarding how governments and peoples treat veterans,
Yep.
and the kind of reality that veterans face once all the training that they receive and all the skill sets that they gain do not translate to a pacifist, non-combative lifestyle, which is what most civilians live. Uh, it's interesting that it comes from Crosshair's point of view, because Crosshair, if we remember, didn't just side with the Empire once. He did it twice. He's done it. He did it in the initial arc when the Bad Batch broke away, and then he did it. I mean, he's been hunting them, and then he did it again at the end of season 1 when they were all standing on the destroyed platform of Camino, and he chose to stay and not leave with his brothers. So now it's very much. It's interesting because he almost builds a bond with the other clone, Mayday, that's similar akin to the bond that he had built with the Bad Batch. There's something about it because they recognize in each other veterans, warriors, people who have been doing this for so long and are just tired of being mistreated. And then for him to do all that, to see Mayday go through all this and then die at his feet because the bureaucrat who's got a hide in them doesn't really care for them and just is more interested in his data pad and getting his boxes back and just mistreats them.
Well,
that really sends him over the edge. So it's an interesting way of discussing a lot of serious issues, but in a Star Wars kind of way.
well, and I also think that what Crosshair is having to Crosshair has always been very black and white. You know,
Mhm.
it's and what he's coming the other clones in well, I mean the other clones actually, but especially in Clone Force 99, they've recognized their humanity and their role as a soldier. And um, Crosshair has lost all sense of humanity since the first episode of the Bad Batch when when Order 66 happened. Um, and so he's coming to that realization that I can be a good soldier and care about people because he saw, like you said, he saw Mayday, putting up helmets and honoring his fallen brothers, whereas before, with Crosshair, it was just that's part of the part of the business. That's what happens. Um,
You
so
you remember when we first meet Clone Force 99 in that first arc of season 7 of Clone Wars,
yeah,
and he's looking down on Cody and Rex, going like, we don't usually work with regs.
yeah.
It's a far, he's gone a long way
Well,
from that character.
and getting back to the episode Dave was talking about with Cody, the beginning of that episode showed him basically in a cell. It was his quarters, but he was basically in a cell. I mean, it was shot in a way to make it look like he is alone. Nobody gives a dang about him, and again, it's the I think so. I think all those things, and it just came to a head. My only criticism, like I said, is that they put too much distance between those two episodes. I don't think they had to be back to back, but I would have liked to maybe have seen at least maybe a third episode where so I could see that arc. I think I wish they would have done more with Crosshair and less with some of the politics side of things. But anyway, so we also see where the Empire is setting themselves up for failure because they're putting people in charge that have no idea about how to be in charge. They're you know bringing in cheaper labor rather than better labor. Getting because the clones, if the clones would have kept if they would have kept the clones as soldiers, it might have been a totally different thing. We wouldn't have had the stormtroopers can't shoot type straight type of thing. But they're getting like I
You
said,
remember what
they're getting cheaper help. They're putting people in charge basically based on status and nepotism and things like that. So it's showing how the Empire's not beaten by Wookiees. They beat themselves by Ewoks. They're beating themselves, when they start setting up shop.
you remember back in Rebels when Rex and um, mentions about the quality of the stormtrooper armor when they sneak into another base, him and got his name now.
Kanan.
uh
Yeah.
Kanan, thank you. When they're going in and he's talking about how, stormtrooper armor's cheap, it's light, there's not stuff in it, whereas he's talking about comparing it to clone trooper armor. And yeah, because the clone troopers are being outfitted to go into a battlefield. The stormtroopers are, even though they're an army, they're more expected to overwhelm
They're a police
anybody they
force.
meet by with numbers. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
expected to overwhelm with numbers, and they're not supposed to be anywhere near the level that the clone troopers are. And it shows, and you're right. Maybe if they had the clones in Endor, uh, things turn out different, but we'll never know.
So again, the way this episode ended, um, Crosshair loses consciousness and then wakes up in the cloning facility.
And if he cooperates, he might survive.
Right. Where are we going with this? Are they going to outfit him with another control chip? Or are we Are we going towards some other sort of modification or enhancement with him potentially? Are they
Like
just going to torture the guy as a prisoner, or what? Are we,
part
you know?
clone, part Zillo beast.
Hmm. I don't
Well,
know.
it's
I'm.
yeah, it's interesting. It leaves you with any kind of because you're not supposed to know what they're doing. You just know, okay, they might be trying to extract whatever makes them special, in order to replicate it. But then they're also facing out the clones. That's what creates this duality of interest with this story. So on the one hand, the Empire is very publicly looking to get rid of the clone army that's been fighting for years. On the other hand, in a secret manner, the Emperor is looking to continue cloning operations and find a way to cheat death. So why the two? Why not hide in plain sight? So I wonder if we know that the stormtroopers are gonna come because that's what we see in episode 4. But I wonder how they're gonna explain that. How they're gonna square that circle.
You
How they're
know,
gonna explain why they're doing those two things.
I'm gonna get all New Orleans here for a second, but as you were talking, Dave, it struck me that the cloners. I'm getting some serious Madame Lalaurie vibes.
Mm,
Like, are we going? What are they doing with Crosshair? It may be a let's let's experiment. Like I said, part clone, part Zilla Beast, but that may be because it's like, hey, we can now do whatever the heck we want because the emperor
yeah.
ain't gonna stop us, and it's we don't have any regulations. We can just do these things. But I will say that it is not 100% clear if the Camino cloners are working for the Empire, is it? we
Not
haven't
yet.
we haven't
Huh.
seen like an imperial officer overseeing them. We've seen the Camino people. Well, no, there has been an imperial officer who just introduced this last episode, isn't there? Um, who's
Yeah, it's the question isn't so much is there an imperial presence there, but are they how willing participants are they going
yeah.
to be in this, and is um
So like I said, there might be some sick experimentation that's going on here, but
you know
And it kind of
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say your former prime minister, um we don't know his whole angle. Like we said, he may be holding things back at this point. um he's how much incentive does he actually have to go along with what they want? Um, and I think like that's the sort of palace intrigue that we're going to have yet is like how much resistance will they see from within on this operation, and eventually that um, okay, we need a mega, so that's the next step for them, right? We got to get a mega here, and the Bad Batch won't take that line down. um, and so there'll be conflict that arises out of that. But yeah, I mean, there's some fun things that we could see unfold in the coming episodes.
And like I said, yeah, we got 4 episodes left. So we got Pabu tomorrow, Tipping Point the week after, and then we have a 2 episode season finale at the end of March. The Summit and Plan 99. So maybe we'll get a couple of answers by that point.
what was it? The like one of the worst movies ever made was it Plan 9 from Outer Space? Is that what it was?
Oh, Planet Nine.
Anyway, so yeah, well, we only have a couple hours before the next episode of the Bad Batch comes out, so I mean, we'll know more tomorrow. Um, but I would not be a bit surprised if we don't see a bit of Crosshair tomorrow. We see something totally different. But anyway, that just is my nerdy curriculum and instruction, degree. That scope and sequence matters to me, and sometimes it seems like these animated series, especially Clone Wars, that was not in a good sequence. It was enjoyable, but it's very confusing to watch from a timeline perspective. And sometimes the scope gets way too big. But anyway, we shall see tomorrow. And then also a new episode of The Mandalorian comes out tomorrow. We're recording this on a Tuesday, obviously. So we will see you next week and talk about what we saw on Wednesday. So until then, I think we will just say have a happy St. Patrick's Day. Be safe. Enjoy yourself. And may the Saints organization try to find a new defensive line, since all their defensive line is going to other NFC South teams. So we'll see how free agency unfolds. But until then, we will say who dat.
Who dat?
Everybody have a great week.
McConkey.